Okay, so hello. My name is Jamit Jose Fandiño Parra. I am a full-time professor and researcher at Universidad La Salle in Bogota, Colombia. And I would like to share with you some very basic and preliminary tips and suggestions that you should take into account when thinking about research proposals and when presenting them. Either because you are writing a research paper for somebody to have a look at it and to understand what you want to do, or because you're presenting um, to an audience to get some feedback on your proposal. Well, these are some tips and suggestions that I think can help you succeed in either writing your research proposal or presenting it. Okay, so let's start. Well, normally the first thing that you should do when you're presenting is to use um, a formal style, and if possible, to be clean, concrete, clear in the information you're going to present, so that your presentation is simple, is easy to follow, it's not confusing, it's not it doesn't have too much information, too many details that can overwhelm the audience or confuse the reader. In this case, if you have official um, presentation that you should use, an official format like this one, will try to focus on what it is essential. So a title, the name or the names of the researchers, your thesis advisor, the person who is helping you guide you with the process of creating and doing your research. Very important also to try to incorporate, if your school, if your university, if your faculty has a research line, so that you are saying that your research is not something done in isolation or it's fragmented. It's something that you do just for your own sake, but that is helping a bigger picture, a bigger program. In this case, most of us at La Salle University in the Faculty of Education either work with education, language, or communication. So the research line that we have, education, language, and communication, is really broad, and most research proposal will fit in it. For example, most of us will try to study and investigate about learning and teaching, or we want to work and study how to teach or learn a particular skill or vocabulary or pronunciation, or we might be interested in improving our interactions with our students or interactions among themselves. Okay, and then, well, the program where you are carrying out your research, that can be a BA program, a master's degree program, etc. Next, normally we have the title. And here, when we have the title, there are some titles that are okay and some that are not so okay. And that happens most of the time because of some situations that we are going to try to clarify. Okay, here we have one that it's not so okay. Critical thinking when learning English in a literature class with university students. You must say, but what is not okay? Well, critical thinking, it's a huge area. There are many things that one could explore within it. Is it about the methods, the skills? Is it about, is it from a philosophical, from a pedagogical, from a methodological perspective? Then that it's not very clear. You're identifying a general area, but you're not saying exactly what you're going to be doing with it. And then learning English in a literature class doesn't really help the reader or the audience understand what the context or the case is. University students, again, it's way too general. Are you going to try to interview or survey or observe every single university student? Then if you think like that, you say, well, not really. I'm going to work with some university students in a particular context, in a particular course, in a particular semester. Then the title, it's way too general. It doesn't help the reader and the audience identify what is it that you're going to be doing. So try to write a title, or try to come up with a title like the next one that is more specific, it's more concrete, and it shows two things. It helps the reader and the audience identify what you want to do, what you're interested in, but it also shows that as a researcher you have a clear idea, clear understanding of your own project. In this case, we have the use of higher order thinking skills in a literature-based EFL class with 7th semester students in the La Salle BA in Spanish and Foreign Languages BA program. So if you see this title, you can immediately notice that it's a lot more concrete and specific than the first one, which is something that we want. It is also it helps one identify who you want to work with, who are you planning to study, to observe, to interview, etc., and where, in what context. So it has three characteristics that I have found out are necessary or are useful whenever you come up with your title. A what? In this case, the use of higher order thinking skills. It's not critical thinking in general, but it's higher order thinking skills, and connected or related to a literature-based EFL class. So it's not learning English in general, but it's a class that is going to use materials, activities taken from literature. And we know who, 7th semester students. So it's not students in the first part of the program, first, second, third semesters. I mean, or these are not students at the end of the program. In Colombia, most of our BA programs take about 10 semesters. So whoever listens to you and reads this title immediately identifies that these students are already in the middle of their BA programs, and you can start thinking about some possible ideas of who they are, what they do, etc., etc., etc. And well, this is a very specific program, the La Salle MBA program in Spanish and foreign languages. Why? Because it's not any program at any university. It's better to, from the very beginning, let the audience or the person who is reading your proposal, the readers, know in what context, what circumstances, etc. Okay, this in terms of title. Then normally after the title, well, you are asked to state what the research problem is and how you can do that. Well, first of all, I suggest putting the research problem in context. You can use the following question to help you do that. What do we already know about critical thinking and university students? This can be general, 1, 2, 3 paragraphs, but here in your presentation is something very concrete, very, very, very precise, of what is it that theorists say about critical thinking and how they relate critical thinking to university students. In other words, what is the relationship? This then makes it different from, for example, working with critical thinking and future teachers, or critical thinking and secondary students. Okay, but here you're just putting a big context to what your research problem is about. Next, you should try to describe the precise issue that your study will address. In this case, what do we need to know about higher order thinking skills and literature-based classes? And notice that here is related to the context that you have explained before, that you have presented before, but now you are addressing specifically the situation that you are interested in. And here is where you can explain why higher order thinking skills and not, for example, low order thinking skills, and why literature-based classes and not business-based classes or any kind of class that people can think of. Next, you should also try to explain the relevance of the problem. Why do we need to know about higher order thinking skills and learning literature in an EFL class? In other words, here what you want to say is this is necessary, this is important because if we do it, we are going to provide a better understanding of, we are going to fill a gap in the theory, we are going to propose some possible improvements, some possible solutions. In other words, here you're trying to make the readers and the audience feel that the research problem you have contextualized and you have defined precisely is worth doing. And finally, you set the scope of your research, and it's what will you do to find out about the use of higher order thinking skills in a literature-based EFL class with 7-semester students in the LASEA BA program in Spanish and foreign languages. And here, what we want to do, what you should think of, it's situations such as okay, like trying to let the audience and the readers know what you're planning to do in terms of theory, in terms of methodology, just very initial. It's just something to let the audience and the readers know what they can expect from your approach, from your particular study. Oh, of course, here you're not going to explain everything in detail. You're just starting, but you're letting them, the reader and the readers and the audience, you're letting them realize that you have a plan, that you have thought about not only the research problem itself, but also how to approach it. Okay, next, normally you're asked to formulate your research problem, and that means coming up with research questions and research objectives. Well, some universities and some programs will ask you to come up with one research question and maybe one or two research objectives. Some other universities and programs want you to be a little bit more specific, more concrete. Here we have that case where you are required, asked to come up with a main question and secondary questions, and then together, similarly, you're asked to come up with a general objective and specific objectives. So if you have a look at what you can see here in the screen, how do teachers use critical thinking in a literature class? What activities do teachers use in a literature class? Do university students benefit from critical thinking materials? You can start realizing that these questions do not have some of the characteristics that I have already mentioned. They're not precise, they're not concrete, they're still very general. There are some disagreements even within them. We're going to talk about a little bit that later on. In terms of research objectives, we have, well, analyze critical thinking in a literature class. And then we have as specific objectives, identify the activities teachers implement, study the benefits students obtain from materials, design a new syllabus for the literature class. Okay, and again, here you have some actions, some like ideas that seem a little bit confusing, that they are not very well connected. Then these questions, these objectives are not the best, and they should be improved. You should go over them, revise them, make sure that they're very connected. Let's see why. I mean, why, and I mean how, what's wrong with them? It's what I'm trying to say. Okay. So first of all, in terms of questions, very quickly, how do teachers use critical thinking in a literature class? Again, way too general. It doesn't specify. It's not precise. The secondary questions, what activities do teachers use? Do university students benefit from critical thinking? Notice that in the first general question, it doesn't really say what you're interested in. Are you interested in strategies, materials, activities, interactions? But then the secondary questions out of the blue, out of nowhere, they are saying, no, we're going to try to answer that question by looking at activities and by having a look also on materials. So they're not clearly connected. And also, one it has a what activity, a WH question, what, and a second one with do university students, a yes no question. We should not have yes no questions in research questions. Okay, we're going to stop here and we'll continue in the second video.